Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the meeting of the Wareham School Committee. Today is Wednesday, December 15th, 2021. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This meeting is being broadcast and recorded by WCTV, and also an audio recording is being made by Jamie Wixton. We'll start the meeting tonight with a moment of silence for two members of the previous members of Wareham staff. First, I'll ask Kevin to say something about Kathy Gleason.
Yes, Kathy Gleason was a Spanish teacher at Wareham High School. Excuse me. Kathy Gleason was a Spanish teacher at Wareham High School from 1995 to 2005. She was well respected by her peers, well liked by her students for her sincerity and her genuine concern for them, and she was also a mother of 3 Wareham High School graduates.
Thanks, Kevin. And Mary is going to share about Pat Fernandez.
So I knew Pat Fernandez. I was fortunate enough to work with her. She was a paraprofessional, and she was still working as a paraprofessional. I want to just read a letter that one of the teachers who worked closely with Pat wrote, and it was also one of her favorite classes to go into, which was the ASD sub-separate program at Minot. And this was written by Michelle Houghton, the teacher. We are deeply saddened and heartbroken over the loss of our dear Nana Pat. Our lives are forever better with having known her. Pat Fernandez has worked in Wareham as a paraprofessional for the past 19 years. She worked at the high school, middle school, West, Hammond, East, and Minot. I think that covers all the schools. This was her second career, and one that she loved with all her heart. She had a deep respect for each and every student that she felt honored to work with. Anyone that knew Pat knows how loving and generous she was. She would do anything for anyone and wanted no recognition, no accolades, and no mentioning that she did a good deed. If she knew that you liked something or were doing something important in your life, she would bring you something to help you out. Her heart and mind was always on someone else. She loved her students, family, and friends so fiercely. She made connections with so many Wareham families. Her passion for the well-being of the students that she worked with went beyond the hours of the school day. Over the past 7 years, Pat has been a constant in our classroom. Even when our numbers were low and she was needed elsewhere, she always came back to make sure our kiddos were doing well and getting what they needed. Her heart was always set on making sure our most neediest students were taken care of. We are going to miss her humming and bursting out in song while she worked. We will miss her saying that lotion helped everything, and her endless words of wisdom to fix things that we didn't quite know how to fix. We will especially miss her catchphrases like, "So far, so lousy," with her thumbs up to show that our class was having a great day, and singing, "Mama said there'd be days like this. They'd be days like this, Mama said," when our class wasn't having such a great day. Pat Fernandez was truly one of a kind. We are so proud to have had her not only as a colleague, but a close friend. Words cannot express just how much she is missed already. The students and families of Wareham truly have an angel looking after them.
Thank you, Mary.
Yep.
And now a moment of silence. Thank you. We will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is public participation. I don't see anyone here in the audience to address the committee, so we will move on to good news. Dr. Shaberhood?
Yes. I'm happy to announce that we have several staff who have been awarded the Cape Cod 5 educational mini grants. There were 134 teachers from 55 schools through Cape Cod, Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, and Eastern Massachusetts who will be receiving a mini grant this year. From Wareham, receiving the grant, Matthew Stanton, Sarah Green, Janelle Brandywine, Lisa Ottavio, Jacqueline DeGrace, and Michelle Houghton. So congratulations.
Thank you. Anyone else? This might come up later in the meeting under the update for the elementary school, but I just wanted to share that I know there's a lot of excitement happening this week with teachers packing and moving, a lot of activity over at the new school. So I know everyone's looking forward to January 3rd. So I just wanted to share that today. April?
Just wanted to, the winter sports has kicked off, so I know that there's been some basketball, hockey, and a track meet so far, and I'm hoping that the kids all have a healthy and safe winter sports season.
Thank you. All right, we will move on. Unfortunately, our student representative is not able to be with us tonight, so we'll look forward to having her here at our next meeting. Next on the agenda is the minutes of the meeting from September 30th. Does anyone have any questions or changes to those minutes?
Move approval.
Okay. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? 500. Next on the agenda, unfortunately, Joan Siemens was not able to be here this evening, so we will move that item to our next meeting, I believe on January 6th. It's our next meeting. So that brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is the student activity account. There's a new person to be appointed. Mr. Palladino.
Thank you. I'm pleased to recommend Stacy Latin as the student activities accountant for Wareham High School. She also is my secretary, but she has experience in the previous school that she served in for multiple years, handling the same account. So I'm pretty excited to not only have her in front of my office, but also to have her with that wealth of experience. And I think it's going to be a great transition. And I'm excited to not have to come back in another year and ask you to accept the recommendation of another accountant for the high school student activities next year, as I think she's going to do a great job, and I think she's going to be doing it for quite some time. And she's very excited about being involved in these student activities. So I hope you will accept our recommendation.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions, Mr. Palladino? No?
So moved.
Okay. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? 500.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Palladino, next on the agenda is the report of the Student Advisory Committee.
That's great. We may have another student trickling in. When I read the agenda, I told them it's probably about 7:20, 7:30 we'd be on, but it looks like we're ahead of time, which is good. But I do have Brendan here, so out of respect for Brendan, he is our newest member of the Student Advisory Council. I don't think he's had a chance to speak. And Brendan Trembley is a freshman, outstanding student, very involved, taking very high academic classes. And he sent me an email early and said, do I have to stay for the whole school committee meeting? and I know what he was inferring because he has a lot of studying to do. So he is going to be here for as long as you would like him to be, to talk about some of the things that we do. We meet twice a month. And he's a very active participant in our meetings, and he brings a lot to the table. So I'm going to give you some time to talk to him, and I think he wants to talk about some of the things that we're working on. We're surveying students quite a bit, and so I'm going to turn it over to him, but I'll be right here next to him if you have any other questions that he can't answer that I can help with.
Okay.
So Brendan Trembley, freshman from Wareham High School.
Hello.
Welcome, Brendan.
Thank you.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about what's been going on at the high school?
Yeah, so at the high school, in our meetings, we've been talking about several different components of what we can do to help improve the school. One thing is the having lockers for the students to be able to access during the day, like whenever they want, like when they're passing to another block. And obviously that got affected with COVID. And I'm assuming that you guys used lockers before it all happened. So yeah, there's going to be a survey coming out pretty soon that's going to be saying that whether or not you want a locker, and whoever answers, we give them their number and their combination number. Another thing is that there's been problems with the staff and student parking at the start of school and in between school, like with the seniors, I forget. Oh yeah, the senior privileges. So yeah, we're working to get more, like some signs so the staff and the students know where they're supposed to be parking every day. And when the seniors come back from doing whatever they do with their time off, they'll be able to have their spot saved for them. And also another thing is adding the new classes to the course of studies. We did a survey, I think Tuesday, that was open to all the students, which basically asked if they had any interest in or any ideas in the classes that we could offer them. And we got a lot of responses, but we haven't really gone through them all yet. So I'm not quite sure which ones are the most prominent out of the survey. But yeah, we're looking into that, and we will probably be figuring out which classes we're going to be asking to be like recommended into the course of studies. And I think that's it.
That's great, Brendan. You're doing a great job.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much for being here tonight. And
You're
yeah,
welcome.
You're doing a great job. It's great to meet you.
Great to meet you too.
Do any of the members have any questions for Brendan? April?
I just have a question. I know Mr. Palladino said that you're involved in a lot of other things at the school. What other groups or clubs are you a part of?
Okay, so I'm a part of the Student Advisory Council, obviously, and I'm also a DECA member. I joined this year, and I'm going to be competing, which is a little bit nerve-wracking, but I can do it. I'm also in Student Council. I'm the secretary of my class, and what else? Well, yeah, I do have, I play sports. I did soccer in the fall, and I'm doing basketball right now, and I do track in the spring. And I don't know, I think that's it.
Well, that's
Yeah.
a good chunk. Well, thank you very much. You did a great job.
And
Thank
you don't
you.
have to stay for the rest of the meeting. You can go home and do your homework. Thank you.
Wait, I'm sorry. Could Jeff just... Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you for being here, Brendan, and you are doing a great job, and we don't tell everybody that. I have a question for you, but and it's a tough question,
Okay.
but I want to assure you that there is no right or wrong answer, okay? Your answer is your answer, and whatever it is, it's fine with me. We have to vote on the budget later in the meeting. My question to you is, when you think about all the classes you've taken over the years, including middle school, but this year as well, how important is class size to you? Meaning the number of your fellow classmates that are in the...
Yes. Okay, so some of my classes are like, there's only like 6 or 7 students, and that's in multiple classes, not only one. I pretty much like both types of class sizes because it's more of a variety. Like maybe some of the courses don't get as many students, but like I'm obviously in those classes. But also, like for example, the history class I'm in, it has like 28 students, and I think that's a lot for the class because we sometimes have to like get desks. I think that got settled, but at the start of the year it was really chaotic and some people were sitting on the floor. But other than that, I enjoy all the types of the sizes, and I think it's good to experience all of that because when the class size is smaller, it can be more one-on-one, and that can be easier to help gain knowledge of the subject rather than there being a ton of students. And you can get more work done, and you can ask more questions, like without having to be like afraid if it's like a bad question or something you should already know. And then in the bigger classes, it's also nice to have that too, because you have other classmates to help you out, and you can like all be in it together, I guess. And for the middle classes, they're like normal. It's like a normal class. And I don't know, I don't really mind how big or small the class is, but it should be accustomed to like how big the classroom is and whether or not you can hold that many students, or if there's a lot of students taking that course, then maybe there should be a little more like equally dividing out the students that have that period. So yeah.
Brendan, it's a great answer, and you're a very articulate representative of your class. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brendan, Dr. Schwab has a question for you.
Okay, I just have a follow-up. So with the smaller class size, if that is a determining factor on the budget, that could mean that that class is no longer offered. Is it better to have the class offered at a smaller class size, do you think? Or do you think not having the class is a better decision?
I don't know, because some people would really like to have that class in their schedule because it's been like offered and they wanted to do it, so they chose it. And I don't think it should be taken away from them unless there's like very minimal students, like, I don't know, like, like 1 to 5. That's like a little too small to have a class, and it's just making too many choices available, because sometimes when you have too many classes, then some people like might not have the space to take all the classes they want, and one of the classes gets like outlined. Oh. Yeah, so like some of the classes might have a low amount of students that are interested, and they're like an outlier towards the other types of courses. Like mainly electives, I'm thinking. But for more advanced classes like AP and all that stuff, I'm not quite sure what types there is. Those are more important than the electives you offer, but there should still be electives that the students want with like a good amount of students that want to do it. So they can be able to, you know, like do what they want to do, and it can help them reach like their future goals outside of the high school.
Thank you, Brendan. Thanks
Chair-
again. Oh, sorry, Mary. I didn't hear.
Sorry, and thank you for sticking with us. I appreciate that. So just out of curiosity, what classes are your smaller classes?
My classes that are smaller are, I'm in Spanish 2 honors. That one has like 7 students, and then my piano class also, I think it has 6 or 7, yeah. And other than that, the other classes are pretty decent.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to, if I can, just introduce Maya Brown. Maya is a senior. This is her 4th year being involved in the Student Advisory Council. We also have Autumn Francis, who's a junior, and Gisella Priestley, who is a sophomore. And like I said, they meet with me twice a month, and I can tell you, it's just the interaction and the conversations, as you heard from Brandon. There's a lot of things they're working on behind the scenes to make Wareham High School better. And Maya, being a senior, has a lot of experience, and she loves questions, so I'm hoping you might have a question or two, especially since she came all the way down here for her. But if not, I know she'll be okay with it. But we just have some great representation, and I know you've heard from Maya before. I'm excited to have Brandon here, his first time in front of the school committee. But if you have any questions, Maya is here, and obviously, Brandon, you can articulate very well, as you heard.
Yes. Hi, Maya. Thanks for coming. You're not late. We are running ahead of schedule, so.
Microphone.
Oh, for Maya?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to come up to the microphone? Do you have anything that you want to share with us?
Hi.
So he did a great job of sharing with us what your group has been working on. We were just talking a little bit about the course of studies, what, he was telling us about that. Is there anything special that you want to share?
Did you talk about lockers yet?
Yes. Tell us a little bit more about that. So did you stop using lockers between classes during COVID? Is that what happened?
Yes, because they didn't want Sorry. Yeah, we did, and we want to get back into using it because students are carrying their jackets now, so they don't want to be carrying it around school all day, and they want to have somewhere to put their things. So, because before COVID, some students like to use them, and now it's just like we have to carry our jackets around all the time, and we don't really want to be doing that. So some students were concerned about if they could use the lockers.
So is that something that's going to be able to happen, or?
Yes, we're hoping so, soon.
Okay, good. And we were talking about the course of studies. Is there anything, so you're a senior, so you've taken a lot of classes at Wareham High School. What, if you had to add a class at the high school, what would you want to see added?
I'd probably another foreign language because we only have 2. And I did see on the survey that we got back, a lot of people said different foreign languages, like American Sign Language or something else. But I'd probably want to take maybe a Portuguese class.
Are those classes available to you now online?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. All right, does anyone else have any questions for Maya?
Yes.
So I went through high school, middle school, elementary school, just like you did. But I never went through it during a pandemic. What has been, is there anything good you can think of that came out of it? And what was the worst part about it?
I would say the worst part about it was I had like no socialization for like a year. I didn't get to like really see anybody, and that was really hard because I feel like sometimes I work better like in groups of people or like with hands-on learning, and that was difficult. And especially since I take some harder classes, it was harder to get like the help I needed with those classes. But I would say something good about it was if on Zoom, if I wanted to talk to my teacher privately, I could always have like a private moment with them after, or like a private Zoom with them. But I would say it was more like cons than pros with remote learning for me.
And the state and the federal government basically believe another couple of years, things should be back to normal. Do you think that's a reasonable assessment when you think not only of yourself, but of your fellow classmates?
I don't really know much about like the statistics of it all, but I would hope so. I really hope that we could get back to the way it used to be, because like the way it is right now with like the masks and everything, and like having to still socially distance and be careful of like washing your hands and making sure like you always have your mask on.
I was specifically thinking about the potential for learning loss that may have occurred during the remote and hybrid periods of time. You probably know some classmates who struggled academically during this period of time. Do you think in a couple of years or less they'll be back to where they were?
I hope so, yes, I do think so.
So it's a reasonable assumption.
I mean, yeah.
I know it's a difficult question.
I mean, I don't think I'd be able to speak for other people, like how they would like be, but for me, remote learning was like, it was difficult, but I feel like I'm definitely getting back in the hang of things with like, in terms of that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. Thanks for making the time to be here tonight.
Thank you.
We'll see you all soon. Next on the agenda is an update on the Test and Stay program from Dr. Schwam.
So to date, there have been 131 tests given and 131 negative results. This month, 63 tests were given. So the 131 is overall since we started. And just this month, 63 tests and 63 negative results. The team from Elevation Health provides the testing, and they are emailed and then scheduled. DESE and EEC, which are our approved EEC vendors in the area, have also combined efforts, and we have established relationships with those providers. So YMCA, Best Friends, and Little People's College. I've reached out to all of them. There's a form. There are a couple of things that need to happen if there's a close contact. One is the families need to sign permission that they're allowed to share the data with us about that particular issue. And then secondly, the parent then has to sign that they give permission to participate in the testing. And so I believe we've accommodated preschool, grade and up to grades 3 or 4, and it seems to be, it's a little chaotic because you have to keep 2 spreadsheets and check on each of those to make sure we're moving in that direction. But our district chose, we had a choice of whether or not to participate with our EEC group because we knew it would be a bit arduous trying to keep track of all of the groups of kids, but so far it's been okay. Mm-hmm. We're working it out, and the programs have been lovely, really cooperative and helpful, and that's been good.
So has this allowed students, you said 131 tests, so this has allowed students who are close contacts to stay in school and be
Correct.
tested, otherwise they would have been home?
Correct. We've saved many days of class as a result. And the good news is, I mean, at the moment, everyone tested is negative.
And are teachers and staff eligible to be tested also, or
They
is it
are.
just students?
No, they are. There's a permission form, or there was one online. I recently took it down because people were getting confused about there were too many forms on the website, and they were confused about which one to click. And we had a lot going on with the EEC group, and so I just needed them to have the one place to go to click so that they could actually communicate. But staff are certainly, they too have to sign permission to participate, and they are certainly welcome to participate.
Okay. And are families asked to fill out permission slips ahead of time, or is it just, so do you put it out to everyone, or just when they become a close contact to be tested? Then
It's been out since the website was developed, rather than saying you may fill that out. Some chose to, some didn't until they were a close contact. So the first round, I contacted every family and guided them through the process of if they chose. I didn't want them to feel like they were forced to participate, but I just wanted them to be aware that they could. And so, but from that point, then word started to get out, and that anyone who has the close contact guides the family to the link to get them, if they want to, they can sign up.
And are there those who choose to have their child quarantined instead of being tested?
Yes,
Okay.
it's their choice.
It is their choice, yeah. Do you find it's more that get tested or more that choose
I would say
not to?
more get tested
Yeah.
at the moment. And as it moves, as it goes forward and people start talking to each other in town, it seems that, oh, okay. You know what I mean? There's a level of understanding of what it means and what it does and how it's done from parent to parent. And I think that makes a difference. We just needed to get it going. And so now we've been rather busy. And it's been at every school, has been a participant.
Well, the number of COVID cases in Wareham has risen, so I'm assuming that that would be the same in the schools. Dr. Shibley?
Yes. When this first came out, we sent a letter to all families notifying them of that option, and if they would like to sign permission then, they could. At that point, we didn't have anyone sign up, and so that's why we have contacted them individually. At this point, though, some information came out from the state recently, and I believe it's going to be published in the paper soon, but Wareham is 47th in the state. Wareham schools with with reported cases. Currently, when this came out from, the date was September 13th to December 8th. We were 47th in the state. We had, at that point, had 168 students and 37 reported staff. Every Wednesday, I'm required to report to DESE the number of COVID cases that are in the schools at that point, and then I send the information to Dr. Schwam, who puts it on the website. So if you go on the COVID website, you can see what has happened during the week. And if you've watched, in the last couple weeks, we've started to rise with cases of both students and with staff. So I would certainly urge people to practice preventative measures, make sure that they wear masks, and if all possible, be vaccinated, because we are seeing the cases go up, and it is of concern to us.
So I did read earlier today that another school in the state, because of the elevated number of cases in their district, that a particular school has gone to remote until Christmas break, or at least until after. What, if you have information from DESE on where numbers would need to be for that to have been, or to become another option for us, if we're 47th out of however many schools in the state?
Right. In order for us to do that, we have to contact DESE, get permission. They want to make sure that we've gone through certain protocols. They don't make it easy.
No, they don't.
And so it would, if somebody's remote, I would say it's pretty significant in the community.
Thank you.
Jeff?
So, Dr. Schwam, just to be clear, we've had combination of staff and students,
Mostly students.
most of the students, the total combined is about 160-something?
So there've been 131 tests, and the last,
No.
the
I'm
tests.
talking about the people who have been positive, who are infected.
I have to look at the numbers. I put them in every week.
I have 168 students and 37
Okay,
staff.
so about 200
Mm-hmm.
have been infected,
Yes.
and so presumably they were infected, some of them were in school at the time they were infected, because there's a point at which you don't even know, right? That's part of the problem. And yet, despite the fact that we've had 200 students and staff in the schools, we have, and they would have presumably would have caused people to say they've been exposed, that despite that, there hasn't been a single positive test for those people who thought they were exposed. Now, I realize they might not have been exposed in the school. They could have been exposed at home. They could have been exposed at the Narrows Crossing. They could have been exposed anywhere. But all the tests you've done of people who thought they were exposed, not one came back positive,
Correct.
which, just in a simple sense, it tells me the masks are working. Because presumably if you had 200 people floating around infected and we weren't wearing masks, you'd have some transfer of the virus. Is that a reasonable conclusion?
I'm not really sure, and in other words, it could be, but what the testing is for close contact within school.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so just
That
for,
was going to be my first question, but I decided I didn't need to ask
and
it.
same with the EEC, so it's a close contact within the school setting. So,
So if
if-
someone thinks they had close contact at home or at a party or something, are they eligible for this test and stay?
no, not technically speaking. So the only time they're eligible is if they are if someone in school is positive for COVID, then the people that are surrounding that student identified as close contact then become eligible for test and stay.
Okay.
So what seems to be happening is that over the holiday break, for example, there were a lot of other people around, and so they weren't in school, and someone had it, and other people then got sick at home, right? And so that then created a different scenario that we don't, and then they obviously have to take care of themselves at home and do the right thing. And I honestly think our parents have been fantastic at notifying us anytime, that they think something is amiss. They're not sending their kids to school if they feel that something's wrong overall. So, it's tough to say because it's not
Okay.
completely
So
accurate.
do we wait 3 days before we test?
No, we test the next day, and it's done over a 7-day period of time from the date of exposure.
Oh, you're telling me you test every day for 7 days?
Correct.
And
Well,
you still
it's
haven't had
every-
a positive result?
Correct, but it's 7 days of the day of exposure. So, for example, if it happens on a Wednesday, you count Wednesday, you count the weekend, and you may not test on the weekend, but they come back to fulfill the 7 days following the date of exposure. Do you see what I mean?
Yes, I
Okay.
understand. And the
Okay.
final question is, what test are they using? Are they using PCR?
BioNex now.
Well, I don't know what that means, but is it PCR or is it something else?
I believe it's the less intense one, so it's immediate. I think it's is that one of the two, POS and PCR, or?
PCR is considered the most accurate, so, okay.
It's probably not that one.
No, I think this is, so it's rapid, so they.
Yes,
find
it's a
out-
rapid.
It's the rapid
Yeah.
test.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
sure.
When did we start this up?
The kickoff was in October, and it was slow going, actually, for quite a while. We had nothing. And then the first was an accident. I thought we could help because it was an EEC program, and there were a few kids. And so I that's where we started, and then I called the department, and they said, no, you can't. You know what I mean, but it was too late, so I apologized to them profusely, but I said, well, they're riding the bus and they're coming, and whatever. So anyway, that was the first round, and then it was slow for a little bit, but then after the holiday, it seems to have picked up quite substantially, comparatively.
And are we still collecting vaccination data? Do you?
Try.
So, I mean, so there was a time when you first collected it, so do you, as people have continued to get vaccinated, have they reported that to you?
Not to me personally, but we are asking them to report to the school nurses.
Well, right, that's what I meant, to someone.
Yeah.
Okay. So have you seen those rates go up?
I haven't checked recently.
No,
But
okay,
I'll check for the next time.
okay.
Wareham rates compared to other towns overall is low.
They were, yeah.
They still are.
Yeah, are they?
Yes, I mean, there are other towns 95% vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
They're and up there, right? They're actively involved in that movement.
Mm-hmm.
But Wareham is not one of those towns, so
Well,
it
I
makes
know
it a little bit difficult.
Yeah, I know at one time, you know, it was lower, and then there seemed to have been a bump.
Mhm.
So. All right. Does anyone else have any questions? on this? All right, thank you, Dr. Schwang.
Sure. You're welcome.
All right, we'll move on to the vote on the budget. So while Christine Suko is coming up front, I'll just say, since our last meeting, so our last meeting was our public hearing with the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee. We were all here in this room. Since then, the school committee did hold a workshop meeting just to be able to have further conversation, get more information on the budget, which was very helpful, so thank you to all for that. And that brings us here tonight for a vote on the budget.
All right, ready?
Yep. go ahead.
Okay, so in your packet, you had a one-pager that said the FY23 budget. So we need to have 3 votes tonight. One is the net, which is $29,650,973. The non-net is $2,425,823, and the total is $32,076,796.
Okay, so I will just note now that Kevin will not be voting on the net portion of the budget, or the total
Right.
portion of the budget. But if I know, Kevin, in the past, you've excused yourself from the room. I don't know if that's,
Right, I think it's just as long as I make it public
Necessary.
that I'm going to abstain from those votes for conflict of interest
Yes,
reasons.
okay. All right, does anyone have any questions for Christine or Dr. Shaver-Hood
Well,
about the budget? Go ahead, Joe.
is there going to be any statements or comments, because I certainly have some, about how we got to those numbers?
Okay.
Was the superintendent planning on saying anything
I
about?
have something to say.
Then I'll wait for the superintendent.
Oh,
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, Dr. Shaver-Hood, I should have
That's
asked you
okay.
first.
That's all right. So this budget number would necessitate the use of ESSER 3 funds, approximately $1.5 to $2 million. And we are assuming that the town would provide a 4% increase. This money would support staff positions that directly impact our students and directly support our students. However, we do realize that when the ESSER funds have been exhausted, staff reductions may result. For this reason, and as we continue to move forward, any retirements or vacant positions will be closely scrutinized and will be decided on whether to be replaced or not, depending on the necessity of that position. As the positions funded by the ESSER monies total approximately 22 positions, additional revenue sources are being examined to help support the district as we move forward. One of the examples that we spoke about was expanding our preschool program to include a larger population. And if this could be done, one of the possibilities would be to house the program at the Deacon's Elementary School. And so we continue to explore the use of Deacon's because we firmly believe in providing a very rigorous preschool program as it provides a strong foundation. And up to this point, we have not had space to do so. We have some other places that we're looking at reductions. While this number is not while we hope it's the final number, we also know that there will be ongoing negotiations as we go through the next several months. When we started out this budget process, we were coming in at a 5% increase. We realized that that was a very difficult number to bring forward, and after further discussion, we have brought in a 4% increase number. This number does include 5 positions that may be reduced moving forward. There's still a lot of possible budget movement that can occur from here until we finish this fiscal year. And so for us to move forward and announce what those positions were, it simply would not be, it may not be accurate, and it certainly, we're going to do everything we possibly can to save all positions. So if people have some questions, we're more than happy to answer them. And as I said, we understand that there's going to be a tremendous amount of work until we actually are ready to bring this to town meeting.
April, did you have anything? No. Oh, sorry. Jeff?
So I had the pleasure, if you could call it that, because it's always a very difficult process, of working with my colleague, Mr. Brajoli, on the Superintendent's Budget Advisory Committee. It was a very difficult process. I can assure the citizens that we looked at a multitude of things that could be done, that were realistic, that would lower the cost as much as possible, and that would still provide a great education for the students of Wareham. In the end, the reality is, and I guess I'm going to use a set of different words to say what the superintendent has already said. The reality is we do firmly believe we need 4% increase in what the town contributed for this fiscal year, for next fiscal year, number one. There will be, therefore, there will be 2 sources of funding for the next 2 years. One will be the normal LEA funding, which is supported by the state, of course, through Chapter 70. And the other source of funding will be the ESSER funds, which must be used up by September 30th of 2024, if I've said that correctly. Thank you. Our business manager is nodding her head. We have, for reasons of clarity and discipline, divided that amount in 2, and we expect to use approximately a little over $2 million every year for the next 2 years, starting next year, to support the challenges that this pandemic represented. But in the end, there will be approximately, the superintendent said 22, let's hope it's not more than that, but some significant number of positions that will be funded through this ESSER money for the next 2 years. If it's less, that's great. If it's more, that's unfortunate. But the important thing is that people like Mr. Palladino, meaning the principals of our schools, will know which of his positions are ESSER funded and which of his positions are LEA funded. And those ESSER funded positions, those people will need to be told because it's only ethical to tell people where their funding is coming from. That does not mean they are necessarily out of a job in 2 years. because they may be highly qualified people that are qualified to take positions that become vacant in the LEA-funded positions. But it does mean they are certainly in jeopardy unless the whole configuration of how people should be used is changed, and that, of course, is up to the superintendent and the principal to make that decision. Other sources of funding included circuit breaker, and the use of the DECA school. We are not oblivious to the fact that that's a fairly significant decision, but it has huge advantages both to the school and to the town. If we use that for a preschool program, we would be providing a very valuable service to this community. We don't know how many people will take advantage of that, but it should have a capacity of up to a couple hundred students ultimately. We hope to get that started even during this school year. The other significant advantage is as soon as we vacate the DECA school, we run into problems of insurance and code and things like that. The school is perfectly safe, and it's a good place to be educated, but there are just rules and regulations of what happens when you vacate a building. And frankly, we have enough vacant buildings, school buildings in this town. And the third thing is, and I was here when we replaced the boilers and replaced part of the roof of the DECA school. The MSBA paid for that, but there's a condition for that payment, and that is if you vacate the building, then you owe the depreciated cost of that, what the MSBA spent, back to the state. By keeping the DECA school open, we avoid almost $1 million payment. I've heard numbers like 800,000, but it's a very large number that if we stay there, we can, the town and the schools do not need to give that money back to the state. So we understand that people may have strong feelings one way or the other, but I assure you there was a lot of thought given, and we think this is the best solution for the town and for the children and parents of Wareham, and I will be glad to take any emails, pro or con, from the citizens of Wareham if they have strong feelings about the budget, but I intend to vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. April?
Can I just ask a question in regards to the possibility of using DECAS as the pre-K program? With the new elementary school being built with accommodations specifically made for pre-K kindergarten, would those rooms then be converted to strictly kindergarten, or would there still be pre-K housed in that building and then additional pre-K housed in DECAS? Okay, I'm just trying to understand because this is the first that I'm hearing of this.
It's a totally appropriate question. The superintendent may have more details, but the short answer to that question is both places will be involved with pre-K.
So they would all be, now the pre-K is the only kind of service that we offer, I believe, that the parents pay the tuition unless the financial qualification comes into play with the subsidies for certain income requirements. Is that correct?
And SPED, of course.
Right.
Yes.
The program that's at the current DECAS, which will be at the new Wareham Elementary School, is an integrated preschool program. So that will stay at Wareham Elementary School. Correct, Kim?
Yes.
So then DECAS would be a completely just total preschool. It would be separate from the integrated program that we currently have right now. But you're correct about the finances. The peer models pay tuition to be part of that program unless they qualify for the reduction.
Okay, so my other question is, I know that last night there was a Board of Selectmen meeting and that there's been a DECAS steering committee put together by the Board of Selectmen. Were they aware of this as part of the budget conversation? That we were looking to possibly as a means of offsetting our budget to ask for less from the town essentially with the deficit that we were trying to make up. Are they aware that we are looking at the possibility of still keeping and utilizing DECAS as an educational building in town?
Yes, I had made several members aware.
Okay. thank you.
But it is fair to say that there would be parts of that building that could still be open or used by other groups in the town of Wareham, correct?
That is absolutely correct. We know that if we would move forward with this preschool model, we would only use probably a wing of the building, and that would leave a substantial part of the building open for other groups. And when we begin in our planning stages for the location, one of the things that we would look at would be how do we isolate our preschool students so we can free up other areas of the building, and that would be possible.
So I know, for example, that with the Hammond School, that the Boys and Girls Club and I think it's the Kennedy Donovan Center, shared that building at one time, separate entrances, and I believe gating or fencing or like a temporary structured wall was put up to separate the two facilities. Is that something like, I know this is gonna be a random reference, but like in the movie The Breakfast Club, when they run down the hallway and there's like a gate that they can't get through, is that an option for fire safety, that something like that would have been able to be installed to separate, separate groups within the building?
Right, we certainly would be working with the fire department to make sure that we hit all codes, but we would certainly need to make sure that we have kept our students safe.
Okay, and is this something, because we were initially turning the building over to the town with the occupancy of the new elementary school, is this something that we need to, and because part of, the MSBA funding for the new school, I don't know what the criteria was with us decommissioning DECAS as is, but would that be something that we would need to negotiate, or have we had to negotiate with the MSBA, the continued use of that building?
No.
Okay,
We would
thank you.
not.
Are there any other questions? Okay, I would just thank Mr. Sweat and Mr. Borjali for their work on the Budget Advisory Group. Thank you, Mr. Sweat, for making those points clear earlier. And unless anyone else has any other questions, we can go ahead with the vote on the budget.
Do you want me to repeat the numbers again?
Well, I think what I need to do is have whoever's going to make a motion to approve the budget to
Read it.
make the motion and include the net number and the non-net number. So it'll be 3 motions and 3 votes.
Correct.
Okay, I make a motion to accept the net budget for FY 2023 of $29,650,973, a 4% town contribution.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll certainly second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Abstain.
Okay, so it's 401.
I make a motion to vote on the non-net spending for FY 2023 budget in the amount of $2,425,823.
Second, and I have a point to make.
Okay, go ahead.
So the town, people who are keeping up with the budget process may realize that this non-net number is significantly higher, approximately 15 to 20% higher than it was a year ago. I want to assure the town of 2 things. One is, this is still substantially less than the average cost around the state to provide transportation services to our students. We have not, as a part of this budget process, changed the eligibility for our students. I can tell you that was extremely important to the superintendent, to the business manager, and to Mr. Borjali and myself, that we not do that. And we hope we don't have to do it as long as this budget is considered acceptable to the to town meeting and, of course, to the finance committee. I will also tell you that thanks to the efforts of the business manager, we are also having an audit done of the transportation services. I was participated in a session of the Mass Conference in November, where the people who do these audits and someone who had benefited tremendously from this audit were talking about the value that this audit represents. it will basically tell us, yes, you're doing a good job, but here's ways you could do an even better job. So we're looking forward to the results of that audit, and we expect to have them back in the next month or two.
Right.
So I thank the business manager for making that happen. She had made it happen before I suggested we do it. So thank you. But this number, as large as it is, basically reflects the fact that to get bus drivers and to keep bus drivers, it just costs that much more. But don't take it out on the bus drivers. What bus drivers are doing is an exceedingly important and responsible position, and they deserve the compensation that they're getting.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? 500.
Okay, and I make a motion for the proposed budget for FY 2023 in the amount of $32,076,796.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstained?
Abstain.
401. Thank you.
Thank you.
It probably ought to say 4% increase.
Right.
I don't know if it matters, but
No, we voted on the number.
I know we
Yeah,
did.
yeah.
I mean, if we're handing the document to anybody like the town.
Okay. Okay, next up is the MCAS report from Dr. Schwam.
Password. Thank you. Great, thank you. There it goes. Good evening, everyone. Before we begin, I just want to say a couple of things that I think are significant and important in this presentation. I'm hoping that you can hear me and open up your minds a little bit as to where we anticipate going and how I looked at the data and why I looked at it and analyzed it and brought it to your attention this way. So we participated in the 2021 MCAS assessment to diagnose our student learning during a tumultuous year of massive change brought on by the pandemic. Our schools have the data and have used this information and the internal assessments we provide to make informed decisions about teaching and learning. As you know, Massachusetts has committed to looking deeply at how we foster diverse, inclusive, and equitable services to all students served. Please understand that I am compelled to share that many have stated about biases in standardized assessments. I truly hope you listen and consider this as we look ahead and plan for our children's future. In the book, How to Be an Anti-Racist by Abram Kendi of 2019, he states that standardized tests have become the most effective racist weapon ever devised to objectively degrade minds. Americans have been led to believe that intelligence is like body weight. The different intellectual levels can be measured on a single standardized weight scale. Our faith in standardized tests causes us to believe that the racial gap in test scores means something is wrong with the test takers and not the tests. These measures can cast judgments on our educators, leaders, and our families. He also poses some really interesting questions. What if our well-meaning efforts to close the achievement gap has been opening the door to inequity? What if we measured intellect by the individual's desire to know? What if we measured intellect by how open an individual's mind is to self-critique and new ideas? What if we realized the best way to standardize a highly effective educational system is not by standardizing our tests, but by standardizing our schools to encourage intellectual openness and difference? Tonight's presentation will include Wareham's demographics, followed by grade and subject data from those students that the test was designed for. Then you will see all grades and subject compared to the state, and most compelling data that reveals the vast differences between our student subgroups. We will discuss our challenges and briefly touch upon some of the solutions we have implemented. So the department, Jeffrey Riley stated that the department will significantly reduce testing time for students in grades 3 through 8 through a session sampling approach in which each student will take only portions of each MCAS assessment in each subject. This modified MCAS administration will preserve the validity and reliability of the test at the school district and state levels. And I would argue that that might be true, but may not. Due to these modifications and comparisons from previous years is just not possible or accurate. And random selection was used, therefore students were all provided with different questions from the test. So we can't even compare a standard by standard because we're not sure what questions they were given. These are our demographics. So we have a significant population of low-income students at 67.3%. Our students with disabilities are 25.9%, and our high-need students are 72.8%. That is very significant. So these are the results of the non-special education and economically advantaged students in our district compared to that same subgroup in the state. So I pulled out that same demographic from the state data and compared those two. And if you look across, we do all right with that particular group of students. I think what we'd like to see is more students move from the partially met to the met category, for sure. And also, we all know across the state, everywhere, we need some help in math. That was clear all the way through. Are there any questions about this?
Could you go back one slide, please, to the demographics? Could you tell me why you think the low-income disabilities and high needs data are significant, but the English language and first language data is not, given the fact that we're, round numbers, 1/10 of the average for the state?
Well, if you're looking district to district and you're comparing test scores from district to district, you have to keep these numbers in mind, because they change your overall number depending upon your demographics. So we don't have a whole lot of English language learners here.
No, I understand, but somebody decided, and maybe you think it's inappropriate, but somebody decided that disaggregating first language, not English, and English language learners is significant because perhaps they have more difficulty learning in an English environment. And we only have 1/10 of the average. So does that give us an advantage over the state districts that are the state average or higher?
Probably.
And that's
just like others have advantages in the other categories.
I realize that.
Yes.
But you emboldened the 3 categories where we were significantly higher, but you didn't mention the 2 categories where we're very significantly lower, and that's my only point. Okay.
Let me just ask, does anyone else have any?
Excuse me, on the next slide, is that a new category, school economically advantaged?
Economically advantaged is the opposite of economically disadvantaged. I made that category.
Okay, so that's not a DESI category, or?
Well, it's either economically disadvantaged or not. So for me to make the distinction between the two, I just changed it to advantage versus disadvantaged.
Okay.
Because if DESI is going to call them disadvantaged, then everyone else has to be advantaged. Right?
Yeah, I'm just wrapping my head around it.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how to say it any other way, but it seems that if you have special ed needs or you don't have special education needs, you are economically disadvantaged or you're not economically disadvantaged, which means you're
But it's still comparing
advantaged.
apples to apples with us in the state at that point.
Correct.
Okay.
Straight through. So those numbers from the state are the same exact population. They're not the whole state. They're those students. That number are the students that are non-special education and economically advantaged or not economically disadvantaged.
Right, and basically, as I went through and did the math, they really are pretty similar in terms of the percentage below the state average.
Yes, which I thought was very interesting. Particularly since I've been reading a lot of material books, I would actually recommend Waking Up White is a fabulous book, as well as How to Be an Anti-Racist. They're very helpful to help us learn about where we are and how we look at what we do. So I did this for every grade level and for English and math, for grades 3, 4. You've had this, I think, for a little bit of time, right?
Yep.
And I found it very interesting to compare us. If we take out, and these two authors that I've read are not the only ones who say this, there are a lot of people who indicate that standardized tests are biased. So that being said, if I take out the students that the test was written for, then these are the results of those students in Wareham compared to the state.
So you've only reported on here for the non-special ed and for the economically advantaged.
Correct. You'll see, as you saw, there's more, right?
Well, there is more, I know.
But for the purpose of the test was designed for these students specifically. It wasn't designed for other students. It's a standardized assessment for the average kid, right?
But it could still give us information on special ed populations, how we do compared to the state special ed population.
I have all
correct?
of that later on, yes.
Okay.
But what I am trying to say here is that we can look at all of that information and make assessments based on that, and every year we end up at the same place, and we're not alone in that. If you take districts who have the counter to our population, and they have a 15% special education rate and an 8% low income rate, those students don't do well either. But the overall score is greater because they have a larger population of kids that the test was designed for. So I'm trying to make a very important point here in this presentation. And I'm not neglecting the other information. I just want to be really clear about what I believe is happening and how we should then look at the data.
But I also think it's fair if we look out, like, for example, we take the senior class right now, has lost 40 students from grade 9 to grade 12. Chances are, most of those 40 students aren't special ed. If we had them, our special ed percentage would be radically less.
Correct.
So it's I don't know, chicken egg, I don't know. But it does impact. The fact that we've lost that many students might, as you're saying, might skew these results a little bit. Or
Correct.
it certainly creates a higher special ed percentage.
Mm-hmm.
Which is something I think we have to address as a school committee going forward, why that happens.
Go ahead, Jen.
Or we need other measures that are more accurate to represent what our kids actually do know with the kids that we serve. This is not the way to do that. It's
Well,
not the right
It's
exam.
a way,
It's one
not-
way.
right.
It's not always.
I don't think anyone, well, let's just speak myself, because I've been on the other side of this MCAS table before.
Yes.
MCAS is not the be-all and end-all. It is a tool, and it's one of the few objective tools we have that does show some type of objective measure that I think can give us some helpful information.
And I don't
so-
deny that.
So that's where I'm coming from for that.
We don't deny that.
Okay.
We actually use the data very actively, so it's never not taken in. But the system is set up to judge as a result of this result, which is not a really accurate judgment on who our children really are and what they can do.
Sorry, April, Jeff, go ahead, Jeff, did you have something? Sure, well, I don't know.
I think Mary was before
Oh,
me.
sorry.
Yep.
All right, Mary, go
So
ahead.
I just want to add that we have to remember that the special ed students do get accommodations for this test as well. I think that's an important factor to remember.
And I don't deny that, to a degree, yes. But the issue is that year after year after year, they're not successful in the big picture, right? They're not hitting it out of the park. Is it their fault? Is it teachers' fault? Or is it the test? Like, at some point, what are we going to look at to make decisions about how our kids are going to proceed? And as a teacher, I can tell you, if I have a whole class failing over and over the test that I'm giving them, I'm going to really look at the test. I'm going to think, oh, it's, or I might change the way I teach, but I'm certainly going to look at what I'm asking them to do, right? And think about that as a way to figure out how to reach them. And clearly that doesn't happen with this. Accommodations are not. I don't think it's fair.
April?
So you have data that's here that I know based on last year, because of COVID, it only goes up to 8th grade. Now, the high school level, MCAS is a graduation requirement determining factor. What year MCAS, would that be their senior year MCAS scores? Or are you saying that even, whereas this data is presented up to 8th grade, is the high school version, the validity of that, a different set of assessment than what it is in the lower grades? And are you thinking, in terms of our demographic and the way that the test was initially written as a gauge to figure out where kids are, as opposed to, trying something different instead of making this the one standard that we follow? Do you also feel that at the high school level that it should no longer be something in the state that should be a graduation deterrent or requirement?
I've always felt that it should not have anything to do with graduation. I think we're one of two, I think right now, states in the United States use it as a graduation requirement, and everyone else has dropped it.
Thank you.
Jeff?
So you made the statement that the test has...
I can't hear you.
Sorry. You made the statement the test has been designed for the economically advantaged.
Mm-hmm. Or the people who are not economically disadvantaged, yes.
I think we're saying the same thing.
Okay, good.
Yours is a double negative, I skipped the
Good.
negative.
Well,
Okay.
she's saying that because that's what it says on DESI, right? It's very, yeah.
Well, I don't think there is a category on DESI of not economically
No.
advantaged. So,
So I
Anyway.
chose to call it economically advantaged.
understood.
Okay.
I'm not thrilled with the fact that we're drawing lines, because frankly,
That what?
I'm not thrilled with the fact that the state draws lines and that we're continuing to draw lines, because we all know children are unique, and it's a Venn diagram at worst. And I know Mr. Palladino has had a gold scholar who was a SPED kid. So, that may be an exception, but the bottom line is kids are individuals, and they deserve more than lines. But putting that aside, this notion that the test is designed for this particular child, my guess is that the test developer would say it's designed to test to see if people have learned what they need to learn in order to be an effective, productive, good citizen. You can choose a different phrase if you like, but the concept of teaching people what they need to learn in order to function well in society. So do you reject that that's the correct thing for an educator to be doing?
I don't object teaching to that, but I do object to having a standardized test measure that.
So how would you measure whether a school, a teacher, or whatever has actually successfully taught what kids need to learn?
Through performance-based assessments.
Okay, so that leads to my next question perfectly, which is, have you tried to, is it possible to reconcile all of the data that you collect for your formative assessments with the data that is generated by the MCAS?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you have. That was a rhetorical question. And when you do that, is it reconcilable?
It is with the NUIA MAP growth assessment that we use specifically.
So if it is reconcilable, then what's wrong with these data if they in fact reflect the data that you're collecting through formative assessments?
With the MCAS data?
Yes.
Because it's not formative, it's summative, and it puts us in a category that we don't belong in.
Well, formative or summative, doesn't it matter how you use it?
Absolutely, but
Okay,
you can't use a summative until the following year because of the way the data comes out, whereas the formative you can use immediately.
I understand completely, but that misses the point, that both sets of data have validity, wouldn't you agree? It's just how you use them that matters, and that's your argument, isn't it?
Correct.
Okay, well, I'll stop on that positive note.
No. Okay, all right, thank you. Where'd mine go? It disappeared. Oy. No. Do you see it somewhere? Because I do not. Sorry. It shouldn't have disappeared, right?
I know.
Oh, thank you. Maybe?
Is that you right there?
Yes. Thank you. Okay, so as we looked at the fifth grade, sometimes they did notably better in some of the grades compared to the state, which I thought was very interesting as well. More kids were successful, and interestingly, the fourth grade data compared to the NUIA MAP growth fifth grade assessment was very interesting to look at because that gave the NUIA MAP growth assessment, which you saw when we looked at the school action plans and the strategic plan. I shared all that data with everyone, so I don't want to keep harboring on that, but we actually got more accurate data from our formative assessment when they returned in September than we received from the MCAS, at least during COVID for that time. So as you can see, we went through all of the grade levels. This is just a quick graph of how many students took the test remotely versus in person and their average scores overall, generally speaking. Not split out by demographics or anything, just the overall. And here are all grades third and fourth compared to the state. And we don't look great here, right? I mean, I think we need to do some work. I know that we're much better in reading, and that's actually very exciting because it means we're we're moving kids in a direction they need to move. And we're working diligently with our math programs now to figure out what our kids need to be successful. Here are grades 5, 6, and 7 compared to the state. And grades 8 through 10. And our high school does really well overall and has year after year. When they get to grade 10, our kids do, they do a nice job. And of course, that's a credit to everyone's work. And then the high school, the amount of support that the high school gives around making sure that our students are able to succeed so that they can achieve a diploma. Can you imagine if it wasn't a graduation requirement, how much fun we could have overall? Right? But that's beside the point, not the moment. This data I thought was extremely interesting when I looked at comparing our kids in subgroups. So I took our special education group and our non-special education group, our economically disadvantaged students and our economically advantaged students, and the results are completely staggering to me. And our teachers do a phenomenal job with all of our students. So this is not a reflection of them. In my opinion, it's a reflection of the test.
So I guess when I was asking before about, like, for example, comparing special ed, maybe grade 3 ELA special ed to the state average, we don't have the state average here, though, right?
No, I do that earlier, I do. It's in the all kids. But I didn't segment out the state in these groups either. I was just curious, when I started to look at the data, how our kids did compared to each other, depending upon their subgroup.
So you broke out the non-special ed and the economically advantaged and compared them to the state, but you didn't break out the economically disadvantaged and the special ed and compare those to the state.
I
Correct?
did earlier. In the earlier slides, per grade, per class, it's all there. I have all the state numbers, the special education numbers, the economically disadvantaged and advantaged numbers, and so forth, yes. So that those large numbers next to the state, when I look at those particular groups, it's all there.
I'm sorry, I don't see it.
All right, so if I go back, see, it says state, it says school, non-special education, state, non-special education. School, economically advantaged, state, economically advantaged.
Right.
So
Not
those
special
scores,
ed, not economically disadvantaged.
oh, I see what you're saying. No, I didn't. I can if you want, but
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, it's, you've broken out those groups, but not all the groups. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing it.
correct. All the groups, meaning compared to the state?
Yes,
Correct.
okay.
Well, only because, like, you were saying that you didn't think the test was designed for special ed students. So I'd just like to see how our special ed students did against the state. Were we did we stay the same as the state in special ed too, or were we below?
Oh, I can look that up. It's very easy, actually.
Okay.
Everyone can. If you go to school district profiles, it's all there. But I'll be happy to pull that out for you.
Thanks.
Every bit of it's there. I just really wanted to make a point here.
Well, I understand you are trying to make a point, more than one point, right?
Yes.
But if we can't see the information and we can't compare it ourselves, it's hard for us to follow you with the point you're trying to make.
Not
Or me.
necessarily.
I will just speak for myself. Well, it is
I
for
mean,
me.
maybe, okay, that's, I could do graph after graph after graph after
No, I'm
graph.
not
There's-
asking for
There's
a
a
lot of
ton of
graphs.
information, and I'm happy to provide that, but this is how our kids did, and this is how they did with special ed and non-special ed. Now, with the state, I'm going to argue that even with a quick view of other districts, they're not doing well either. So I'm going to say that maybe we didn't do as well as the state, but they're not doing great.
No, I know that. I know they're going
Yeah,
to be, it's just,
so-
it makes sense that the special ed population isn't going to do as well.
Right, that's why they break them out, and then.
But it still helps us judge if we like are woefully behind the state in that
I get
as
you.
well. That's what I just want to find out. That's
Yeah,
all.
and I'm happy to provide that. So I can update that and send that to you
Okay.
without a problem. It's easy to gather, it's just making some decisions about what to put on the slide. So each group this just information to me was compelling overall to look at. These are our challenges. We have unusually high numbers of special education and economically challenged students and high needs. We look closely at standards and address areas where we can improve. We need to do that because standard by standard, as you look at where we are compared to the state, there are issues. We need to address those issues significantly with all of our populations. We need to identify where biases may exist within the test, as the success rates have been consistent for our special ed and economically disadvantaged. And right now, we are highly focused on math. We are analyzing, piloting, and identifying how to begin to solve deficiencies in math. We are also looking at an assessment system. Through the NUIA map growth that the middle school is doing, 5th, 6th, and 7th, bringing that down to grades 1 through, so we would have it 1 through 7. The original test that we started with was FAST, as you know. And FAST is a skill-based test that gives us information on where our kids are deficient in certain skills. The MAP growth is a standard-based assessment, which gives us information on where they're deficient in standards. It's a little bit longer, the assessment, and we need to make sure that everybody's ready for that, the teachers and everyone's trained appropriately so that they feel comfortable giving it. There will be pushback, though. There was when we did it at the middle school originally, because it does take a little bit longer for students, but it gives us a very accurate, it identifies accurately where we are based on standard. So what we'll do is a combination of skill and standard with the younger students, and as they grow, because they're ready for that now, they're in a good spot, particularly in reading, where we don't need to measure their skills. We need to measure how they're doing by standard. And that's kind of a good place to be at the moment. So we're looking to raise the bar with our assessment so that we can gather more information that's accurate and helps us to make informed decisions as we move ahead.
Does anyone have any questions?
So some of the solutions, we started some committees. We've got some staffing, as you all know, and some programs that we're looking at. So we have an SEL committee that's addressing the social emotional needs of our students, and that is driven by teachers in every building with a chairperson. We have a modern teacher group, professional development group, that with also has a chairperson, and we are looking at how to differentiate and create rigorous modern teaching practices through the district. Social workers and intervention staff have been hired, and there's been time allotted for extra help within the schedules. And we are, as I said, currently looking closely at math programs, district assessment systems, software, and professional development. So we're busy.
Yes. Well, thank you for putting this together for us.
Just
Sure.
Go ahead. Oh, yeah.
Just one more. At the building level, either by grade level or principals or teachers, have we done an item analysis by standard and by grade level?
Yes.
That has been done, so teachers are aware?
Yes, they do a really nice job, actually, of this, and they spend a lot of time looking at it, and have for many years. This isn't so they're really looking deeply at how our kids are, what standards they need to work on, what they got to, what they didn't get to, how much time they needed for certain areas that they may have needed extra time on some and didn't get to others. So they're looking at ways to help students get where they need to go and be successful by standard. I think that's how everyone is looking at how
And
they're
because there's so
teaching.
many standards, do we kind of prioritize them? Do we have like some power standards that, or have they identified certain standards that they believe are more important than others or more crucial?
Yes, it's a little bit more difficult here because we fall short in all of them compared to the state. And that makes it really difficult to prioritize. But I think what they've done is chunked some of them and decided how then to proceed using that information to help students show mastery in those standards.
Yeah, I don't think we can be afraid of the, I'm not saying you're afraid of the data, that's not what I mean,
Right.
but I don't think as a district,
Nope.
we can be, it is what it is, and so what will we do about it? That's all.
Well, and I think that's the big question, but I also, my biggest concern is that it diminishes it diminishes the effectiveness of what we're doing here in Wareham, and it doesn't give kids the credit they deserve for all of who they are. All right, we spend a significant amount of time talking about this test. Teachers spend a significant amount of time trying to help students pass this test. And so it's all in checks and balances, right? We want to use it, and we want to learn from it and move on from there, but we also want to celebrate what our students are really good at. And this should not determine where they go in their life. It shouldn't have that much power. But we give it all this power. And I think we just need to make it right-sized. It's time to look at it for what it is and put it where it belongs. I'm not saying I've used this data. I am very familiar with the data. I'm happy to have the data. I love data. So it's not about that. But it's about what it says externally in the world about us is where the problem is. Because it's not true. We are a really strong school district with people who are doing incredible things for our kids. And when you put a report out that everyone said, yeah, this is how to judge our district, it's just not fair.
Well, it shouldn't be the single factor.
Correct.
It's a factor, but not the single factor.
Yes, exactly.
So I have a question. So if I am the parent of a student who used to be a student who was meeting expectations and now is partially meeting expectations, again, on this one test, but perhaps it is reflective of their performance. So you're talking of their overall performance after COVID, right? So you're talking at it from a very higher level. Can you give me an example of something, if I have a sixth grader who is in that situation, what specifically might we be doing for that sixth grader?
So are you saying not COVID year?
No, after the COVID year now has this learning loss. And I said not necessarily just on the MCAS, but overall.
Okay, so so one of the things that we do immediately is we do our own assessment to figure out what they actually know, right?
Mm-hmm.
That report is sent home to families, so families have access to that report. Teachers meet with those families to discuss what strategies they can do to help students gain some more knowledge so that they can do better at school. And there have been a lot of Viking blocks. There's intervention math sessions. There's intervention reading sessions. We have a rock star of a teacher. Kids run to that class at the middle school. He's new to us. And so he's helping a tremendous amount. And kids, they love it. So that's kind of amazing. But there are many, many layers of what it is we're doing to help our students. And then on top of that, we have these smaller check-in assessments through a system called Edulastic. And so after a week or 2 weeks of learning something, they'll ask maybe 3 questions to figure out who knows it, who doesn't know it, who might need more time in that particular area. And so we're doing that in English, math, and science. So all kids are sort of, there's a lot of shorter periods of time of check-ins that are identifying what needs to happen and how we can then move forward from where we are.
And is that different than what's been done in the past?
I think yes, we have more help than we've had in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So there was, for learning loss, as you've heard from the budget and all of that conversation, there have been positions hired for that specific reason. Extra people, extra time, extra intervention blocks, a lot of different strategies. We're looking at some math programs, math support systems that are in, that we have, that are fairly new. We haven't used them before, but they became more popular because they were done on the computer and the kids could do them at home. And so we've carried them through this year.
And how quickly are you able to take those and implement them? So, they make a difference this year?
Implement what?
The programs like you're talking about.
Oh,
Like
immediate.
You're talking about a math program.
Yeah, they're immediate.
Okay.
We're doing them now.
Okay.
We started them right out of the gate.
Okay. Well, I only asked because you said you're looking at it, so you're,
Well, no,
you're
we're,
not
we're,
just looking, you're using it.
we're looking at mostly at the elementary school because DESI has identified through Curate some accelerated math programs. And so we were able to obtain a grant that is, we're implementing ZERN at the moment, which is a program that we're using in tandem with the program we had prior. So we purchased that program that we had purchased for 6 years for just 1 year this year. And at the same time, we're looking at the accelerated programs through ZERN, grades K through 4, having professional development around that. And then we have a grant for ST Math, which is a program with, I don't know if you've heard about GG, but the kids love GG. So they're all practicing math with that. Lexia we've had all along, but that was extremely popular during the pandemic. So kids are still engaged with that. So yeah, we have a lot of different programs that we're using, and we started right away. We had that all ready to go before kids arrived.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Jeff?
So I'd like to discuss a little bit thank you. So I'd like to discuss a little bit your assertion of the power of this test. We know the high school, as you've stated and shown, is doing very well. And the only real power this test has is to keep someone from graduating. And thanks to Mr. Palladino and his staff, they're not doing a very good job of keeping our kids from graduating. They're graduating.
Correct.
And going off to great schools.
Correct.
But one of the frustrations of parents, and not just in Wareham, all over the state, is kids do well and they go to college, they get tested, and then they find they're being forced to take remedial courses at full cost just to stay in the college. And that turned out, and Mr. Palladino, correct me if I'm wrong, it turned out to be basically a misalignment of what was being taught in the high schools and what was being tested in this pre-freshman year test. I think they've ameliorated that problem to some extent, but are you suggesting that our kids are learning, but we haven't figured out how to measure what they're learning, and that the MCAS does not in fact measure it? Because I'm sure you agree that it's okay to measure the degree to which our kids are learning.
Absolutely.
Okay, so how would you align what our kids are learning so that the test reflects the fact that they are?
Well, I wouldn't have a standardized test.
Well,
I mean, number one, because that's assuming everybody's in the same place at the same time, in the same moment, and that's not necessarily true. I may use parts of an assessment that was effective to find out, and I would argue that formative assessments are much more important than summative overall anyway, because then you're finding out in the moment, and you can help.
but at the
Right
moment
then.
that you take that formative test, you do have a result, a measurable result of how that student
Correct.
is doing.
Correct, and we have a lot of systems in place to measure that.
Okay, so what you're saying is it would be okay to use the formative test to report back to parents how their kids are doing.
We do. We use the formative assessments, and we do report back to parents.
Okay, so is that formative test standardized?
No, it's computer adaptive.
Could you explain for the uneducated what that means?
Yeah, so there's a level of artificial intelligence within the assessment itself that will offer certain levels of questions depending upon how that student is answering those questions. And so that will give them a level and have them within a certain level that will then indicate what they need to do to move forward. So basically, it'll give kids tests, questions at different lexile levels to determine where they are.
So it really isn't, you can't compare one child's measurement to another child's measurement because they're answering a different set of questions.
Correct.
So that's,
But you can meet the individual student's needs and know whether or not they're learning.
I understand the distinction. This is too long a conversation for a school committee meeting. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. If no one else has any other questions for Dr. Schwam? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up is the report of the business manager, the November monthly report.
So in your packet, you received the November year-to-date budget report. So we're about, I don't know, around 42% into the year. And if you look on the last page, we have available about 62.5%. But you have to remember that a lot of the stuff is encumbered through that we anticipate using through the end of the year, like utilities and such. So I continue to monitor the budget almost daily, and the two areas of focus that I'm concerned about are the substitute lines and out-of-district transportation, and just transportation in general due to the high fuel cost and the high out-of-district placement contracted services that we are using to provide to get the children to their respective schools. Does anyone have any questions for me?
So I was just saying to our chair, that's the first time in 13 years I've heard someone say that they're encumbering a whole year's worth of expenses before the fact, before the actual expenses are known.
Well, that way, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
So that way you can anticipate what you have, and we'll reevaluate those encumbrances, say, after we get through the winter, and then relook at what we think we're going to have to pay in the spring, and we can reduce those purchase orders or increase the purchase orders. It's an estimation that holds that money there so we don't use it for anything else. Not that we would, but as the business manager, I like to know on a weekly basis right where we stand. And the more we can encumber, the better, the more comfortable I feel looking at the numbers. And it's reevaluated every few months, like I just said. The only thing we don't encumber is salaries. But I keep track of that as well. It's just not reflective in here. It's in here, you just see through the end of November payroll payments.
So what that means is that from category to category, the percentages could either be meaningful or meaningless.
Correct.
Which makes it really hard to look at.
Well, so those amounts that are encumbered but not yet paid, are those all under outstanding POs?
Yes.
Is that in that
correct.
column? Okay.
Yes.
But I don't know how many months of encumbrances they represent, because it varies depending on the category.
Correct. And some things you can't encumber for the whole year, but the big ones that I look at are utilities. I've done it both ways in different districts, and as a business manager who's managing $30 million, I need to know the money is there for the utilities. And like I said, we reevaluate after every season. So maybe we can reduce that purchase order, or maybe we need to increase that purchase order based on our estimations.
So when you pay a bill, you basically reverse the encumbrance by the amount of the bill that you paid.
Correct. So in the outstanding PO, that, once that is paid, it moves over to the paid column and it reduces the PO column.
And the encumbrance.
And the encumbrance, right, that's what I mean. So the outstanding PO, which is the encumbrance, when you pay off that purchase order, that amount of money moves over to the payment to date, and it reduces the encumbrance on that purchase order.
So encumbrance is the same as paid POs.
Outstanding POs.
Outstanding PO, yes, same thing.
Well, outstanding PO is one column. Encumbrance is another column.
No,
Oh, sorry, that's ending balance, never mind. Okay. So payment to date,
outstanding, a purchase order is encumbering funds, so if it's an outstanding purchase order.
got it, okay,
Okay,
okay. So I repeat, I'm not sure what to look at, I'm not even sure what I should question. Okay, thank you.
April?
So you said that there are the two items that you are keeping a close eye on. Do you anticipate, if things are going the way that you project them, that we will be going over budget on those particular items?
the potential is there, yes.
Do you know, are you able to estimate how much more than what the current budget is, like percentage-wise, how over?
Well, substitutes is extremely difficult, because we haven't even come to the spring, to figure out who's gonna be out, if they need to have a substitute. That's difficult to do. With the transportation, the fuel costs, we get fuel through the town, so we get monthly statements from them, and we journal them against our account, because everyone has a different code when they go to get their gas. So last month, our fuel charges were almost $12,000 for all different departments that use the fuel, but of course, 80% of that was transportation. So that's another thing that's hard to predict as well, because the cost of fuel is all over the place right now. So even though we get a discount at the pump, it's still a lot more than what we paid even 3 months ago. So.
Okay, thank you.
My only question was about the out-of-district transportation line, but you answered that.
Okay.
With what you said earlier,
Yep.
so.
And that can also fluctuate too. If we're transporting a student to X school and they leave the district, we no longer have to transport that kid to S school. Or we could have a kid move in that needs transportation, so we have to find a vendor, which has been a challenge in itself, to find a vendor to drive our kids to out of district. So, it's very volatile, as Mary can tell you, that special education is very volatile, so.
Well, no, just by looking at this, it looked like the account was depleted more than we would want at this time of the year. That's
Yes,
all. But now
exactly.
I understand.
Yep,
Okay. All right, if no one has any more questions, thank you.
you're welcome.
So we'll move on to the report of the superintendent.
Thank you. First would be approval of gifts. We have sweatpants, undergarments, and pants from the St. Vincent de Paul to support the nurse's office at the John W. Deacon Elementary. And we have a gift from Noah Young in the amount of $150. $75 will go to the elementary music department, and $75 to the middle school music department. I would ask the committee to approve both gifts.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 500. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I would ask you to please approve the bill and payroll warrants as listed on the newsletter.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained, 500.
Thank you. Next is the vote for the Turning Points to allow them to use the McDuffie Center. We've talked about this at several meetings. I'm bringing to you tonight the final document for your approval.
Does anyone have any questions? No? I guess it was just me that had lots of questions. Thank you for addressing those. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
I'm sorry, I do have one more question. When would this start?
I will get with the Turning Point and we will come to an agreement, probably the first of the year.
Okay. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained, 500.
Thank you very much. Next, I have the Chapter 74. This is the new admission policy. It's required by DESE, and we need a vote by the school committee.
Did we have a previous admissions policy?
No. But because we receive a very, very, very small grant, this is a requirement of DESE, so Dr. Schwam has worked with this policy, and that's why we bring it to you tonight.
Okay. Does the grant go to support the,
High school,
yeah.
Yeah.
So the only Chapter 74 program is DECA, is that true?
yes.
It's actually marketing.
Oh, is that the?
That's the official.
Proper, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
The DECA is just a
Organization, you're right,
organization,
yeah.
a separate
I should know that.
entity really, but it's marketing
Mhm.
is the Chapter 74 program.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Jeff?
So what's the difference between a school choice student and a non-resident student?
That's a really good question. So this is a policy for vocational technical schools, to be honest. Full out Chapter 74 schools, like Upper Cape Tech and all of the others. Because we have one program, the Department of Education and Chapter 74 have decided that we need a policy. I tried to
Bless you.
explain that everybody's accepted and we don't really have an issue with admissions and we don't exclude anyone from the program. We just let anyone who would like to take it join, but they have said, do the best that you can. We need the policy because you have a Chapter 74 program.
I understand that point, but the non-resident paragraph on the bottom of the first page, why is that necessary?
Because in a VOTEC school, if a student would like to be part of that, there's a document that has to be signed off from the superintendent of their school district, and that would be a non-resident, such as if we have students going to Bristol Aggie, there's a document that the parent must fill out, includes a student name, and then I must sign the document. And that would be a student that is a non-resident.
But that's where they're going to Bristol Aggie?
Or, yes, and that's just an example. So if a student
So-
went to North Fork Aggie or
All
something
right,
like
give me an
that.
example of someone who doesn't live in Wareham, who wants to take our Chapter 70 course. Are they considered a school choice student?
School choice for us.
Okay, so this policy is our policy, right?
Yes, but this is.
So
this is
why do
what
we
this-
need the non-resident paragraph?
Because that's what the state says. And believe me, Dr. Schwam has been back and forth with the state numerous times about what needs to be in the document, and in order for us to be eligible for the grant, we need this
So even though it
policy.
doesn't make any sense, we should pass it anyway.
I would appreciate it,
Yeah, that would be really nice because it doesn't make any sense that we need it,
yes.
to be honest, but but they're requiring it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would you like to make a motion to approve it?
So moved.
No.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained, 500.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Next, I gave you a draft proposed district goals as I will complete my tenure in July. You will not be evaluating me this year. However, I am providing some goals. My suggestion would be to look at these goals and perhaps form a small committee that would work with some principals to come up with what you would consider as district goals for the year and make some adjustments.
Well, you say that like it's so easy.
I know.
So the superintendent and I did have a discussion because, like she said, there will be no superintendent goals, but we should still have district goals. So I guess I'd just like to hear from the committee what they would like, how they would like to proceed. April?
I definitely think continuing to have district goals, I'm not sure how that would be assessed or how the data would be given at that point, but it would be, I think, good to stay consistent in keeping up with having goals and benchmarks and check-ins. There are potentially things that I would like to see added to the goal list, especially with the potential of new leadership coming in. So if we're able to, I don't know if we're setting this up for discussion now, tabling this for further discussion, waiting to put a committee together, or appoint a committee to, either where we have a moment to kind of reflect on what we would like to add to this or change or
Right, no, we wouldn't.
prioritize.
We wouldn't vote on it tonight. It wouldn't be finalized tonight. We
Okay.
could certainly form a committee, but I would point out that we are talking about the year that we're in, where it's already December, so.
Right, and I would hope that we would look to the strategic plan too, so as we're not.
Well, I was
you.
gonna say,
Thank
there
you.
are the goals, yes.
I'm like,
No, yes, so as April, as you were talking, I was thinking that there have been goals presented, and certainly.
and they've been identified as district specifically with measures connected
Right,
to each
yes.
goal, so.
But
Right.
I was just more referring to if we're going to model this as opposed to
Yeah, I get
the
it.
strategic plan, model it similarly to a superintendent evaluation, but more of like, changing it to a district evaluation with those kind of benchmarks and supporting documents and things like that, and maybe choosing or editing whatever we would like to see, kind of even going from post-holiday break to, to the end of the school year.
So what would be the best way to do that and take into account, some of what's on here and and what's already been presented?
Would there be the possibility of perhaps a workshop meeting with the school committee as opposed to sending emails or forming a subcommittee, having a workshop meeting just to verify or add or adjust or discuss any changes or additions that we would like to make to what was presented? If that's agreeable to the rest of the committee, just to make sure that we're all on the same page and our focus is the same.
Do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I think that would be a really good idea. If people would like to send their suggestions to us, we would be happy to compile them prior to the workshop, so you could see what everybody would like to have, and then have the workshop to discuss what suggestions have
And
been made.
whittle it down.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that would also include Dr. Schwam, the principals?
Yep.
Well, I could just send the district goals that were presented with the school action plans. So there were the school action plans, but then there was the district separate. So what I could do is just take them apart and make them just clean, right?
Right.
Because we're more or less just looking for like bullet points of, what we're looking to track as the year, especially I think with the follow-up of the learning loss and the follow-up of, the remainder of what's still a COVID year, essentially. I know we keep referring to last year as the COVID year, but that was more of like the remote COVID year, and this is still a COVID year. So I think that would be a good way to get us all on the same page and make sure that we have something concrete to look at towards the end of the school year.
Okay. Mary or Jeff, do you have anything to add? Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Shapewood. This is what I asked of her for this meeting, so thank you for doing that. It's definitely a place to start, and we'll coordinate, that coming together.
Okay.
So thank you.
Thank you very much. That's my report.
So we will move on to the report of the school committee. We'll start with an update on the elementary school. Jeff, do you want to start with that?
Sure, but I'm sure the superintendent has some things to add
Yes, well,
because.
that's why I said start with you.
Yes.
Yeah.
The good news is we received our certificate of occupancy, which gives us control of the building. There are less than, and this may sound like a large number, but in fact, it's a very small number, less than 50 items left on the punch list, which, should be certainly done by the end of the month. The only real hiccup, unless the superintendent discovered some others, is we've still got old cafeteria furniture, and we do not have a very beautiful mural that is going up in the main lobby to complement the wonderful map of Wareham that's on the floor. I could give you the gory details, but the bottom line is when it was manufactured, it was full of defects. So it had to be sent back to the manufacturer. Fortunately, the defects were discovered by the people who were actually going to put it up. But they discovered it. It was sent back, and it'll be delayed about 6 weeks. So for anybody who's a member of the public who's dying to get into this building, and I would be if I were a member of the public, it is going to be magnificent, but we want to have the ribbon cutting when it's truly ready to be seen. And the mural, as well as the cafeteria furniture, are the big holdups right now. Yes?
So I know that, and in previous updates, you had stated that, with interest rates being low and everything, that we had been coming in under budget. Is that still the case? Are we still under budget, or are we at budget of where we were going to be? And what was the percentage that the taxpayers are going to be responsible for at this stage?
At this stage, it is still less than half of the cost we expected it to be. And all of these delays have not, in fact, increased the budget. So it's still all good news for the taxpayers, and I think it's all good news in terms of the quality of the building in which their children will be educated. So there's been no change to that whatsoever.
And my other question is, I know that we had voted to have 2 half-days for the elementary school teachers to be able to facilitate moving their classrooms and getting things set up. How have those been working for the teachers? What has their help been for moving things in? Is it something that we've had outside people to aid them? Have they been having to do this all on their own? What was the process for just getting things moved from one school to the other to help with a seamless transition?
There was a professional moving company hired, and so I believe they finished up today. There still might be some straggly items that that need to be moved in, but we started the move last week. Boxes were provided by the company, and the move was scheduled, and the moving company has moved it in. We're now to the point where staff spent a large amount of time today unpacking boxes. There still will be some things that will need to be moved over the vacation, and we will take care of those. If staff chose to move anything over, it was because they didn't put it in the box, and that was their choice to do. As far as tours, we have provided tours for all elementary staff at this point. Our last one was last night, and we took people through. Tomorrow, we start tours with the students. In the morning, there'll be 4th grade, and then at around 12, it will be 2nd grade. Tomorrow evening, kindergarten and preschool parents will be given a tour of their child's area, and then in subsequent nights, other elementary parents will be provided a tour of the area that their children will be in. They will not be going through the whole building, but merely staying where their child will be in classrooms. Teachers have been provided time to unpack. We'll continue to do that and provide coverage.
So does that, providing of the coverage, does that kind of going into what Christine had mentioned as the sub-budget? Are we using other people to cover those classrooms while those teachers set up their classrooms? Or, and are they, is that how that's been working, or are they kind of on their own to figure out how that's like how that plays out?
Yeah, no, that has been coordinated by the building principals in providing the coverage, and they have been providing it organically, meaning that we are not bringing in subs to cover. I mean, even if we wanted to do that, there simply are not enough subs in district that we could cover all the classes. So they've been very creative in providing coverage of students, allowing teachers to go over and unpack.
Thank you.
I do want to point out, we anticipate that the last meeting of the school building committee will be January 3rd, and all of you are invited to attend. And it will take place in the new elementary school cafeteria. So I encourage you to be there, and of course, you'll have the ability to roam around and take a look at this magnificent building. And I think we're including the Board of Selectmen, Kim, didn't we decide that in that invitation as well?
You know, and I would, you know, right now, we're in the midst of some major furniture deliveries. The bulk of our furniture is coming in, has started coming in and will be completed in the next several days. The only thing right now, the only major furniture that we're on a delay is the cafeteria furniture. There's some other little things that we have a delay, but nothing that we cannot, that we would have to move over. So we feel really good about that.
All right, sounds good. Dr. Schwan, do you have anything to add? Okay. All right, thank you. We will move on to school committee meeting dates. So there is one more meeting that we're proposing to change the date of. It is Thursday, February 3rd, would be changed to Wednesday, February 2nd, and it would be held here in the middle school.
Thank you.
Is everyone okay with that? Okay.
Do you need a motion?
We
to
do need a
accept?
motion and a vote, yep.
Motion to accept.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 500. Thank you. Next, on to the policy review committee. Kevin?
Okay, so the first policy, all we did was a naming of dedication of rooms and buildings. We added fields and grounds to the title.
Move approval?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 500.
All right, the next policy, school committee standing rules of procedure. There was a discussion about what 4 days meant in terms of meetings. When meetings got moved to Thursdays from Wednesday, it was suggested that it would be helpful to central office if we could say materials would be distributed on Monday. We on the committee agreed to bring that to the full committee to decide if everyone was okay with that. And the other change was just adding going from 1979 copyright to a 2020 copyright for Robert's Rules of Order.
Motion to accept.
Second?
I just had a question on number 4, under conduct at meetings, and about the public making a brief statement.
Number 4?
It's on the bottom, under
Okay.
conduct at
Yep.
meetings. I wish it said something about being able to do that during public participation, because really, that's the same thing, right? I mean, I guess it doesn't matter, it's in there, and, because it certainly could happen, and, you know, someone could make a statement, it isn't the normal procedure.
But it's at your discretion.
It is.
Yeah, because we
Yeah.
discussed it at the discretion of the chair, so whereas we had on the agenda where the public participation was suggested, that's, I think, why we left it worded
Okay.
as was.
All right. All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 500.
Okay, criteria for approval of a private school by the Wareham School Committee. There were no suggested changes, so it's keeping the policy as is.
Okay. Do we need to vote if if the policy remains the same?
Yes.
Okay. So, so moved to accept the policy as is.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 500.
Okay, the next, legal counsel selection
Yeah.
criteria, number 4, that's going to be a little different than stated here. It's going to read, certify that neither the attorney nor the attorney's firm discriminates according to, and then where it's in the yellow, we're going to start with race, it's 2 lines down, race, color, religion, national origin. It just lists out what we already have on most of our Wareham School documents, right there, and Jamie's aware of what that change is, so we were just being more, we basically covered everything, we think.
Okay.
Move
And-
approval.
Second.
Can I ask a quick question? Does anyone, the selection process, this is a selection criteria. Is there another policy for selection process? Can you look that up? No. Well, we don't need to answer it now. I guess I'll find the answer to that, maybe. I was just curious if anybody knew.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my
I
head.
don't
Okay.
remember.
All right. So we have a motion, and a second. I'm not going to take time worrying about that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose, abstain, 500.
Okay, restraint of students, the only change was in formatting, nothing in content.
Move for approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain, 500.
And then search and seizure, we added marijuana, tobacco, vaping. I might change vaping to vaping products, maybe.
I think that's
there.
what it was
So
supposed
it'd be
to be.
marijuana, tobacco, and vaping products were added to the other list of illicit items and controlled substances.
Move to approve as changed with adding products, as Jamie noted.
Second?
So I have a question. I think we're all aware of this horrific recent example of a student having a gun in their backpack, or apparently having a gun in their backpack, and sitting in front of the principal with their parents. For either the superintendent or Dr. Schwan, what rights would Mr. Palladino, for example, have had with respect to searching that backpack without the approval of either the parents or the student?
If there's probable cause, the backpack can be searched.
Okay, and who gets to decide what's probable cause?
The principal.
Okay, so, excuse me?
They're the parent. You are the parent of them when they're in your school.
Even if the parents are sitting there?
It's locus parentis, it's part of the rules.
Okay, so the bottom line is, this policy allows us not only to seize, but to search, as long as we have probable cause.
Mm-hmm.
And I assume that the concerns of the teachers that had been expressed would have created that probable cause. Is that a fair statement?
That's fair.
I'm not sure that not knowing all of the details, if somebody came to us with similar concerns, that would give us probable cause.
That's all I'm asking.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Do we have a motion and a second?
Yes. I
We
think
do.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose, abstain, 500. Thank you. Next, under report of the school committee is superintendent search. So at our last meeting, Dr. Shaverhood made her intent to retire, made that announcement. And so the first step in the search for a new superintendent will be a workshop meeting of the school committee on December 29th at 6 p.m. The school committee will be there. We'll be meeting with a representative from Mask, and we will take the first step in that search. And so, is there any other business? Does anyone have any other business to? Okay. Then I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful holiday. Can't believe we won't meet until after.